Third time's the charm.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, we'll see. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Undergraduate, a percussion-based podcast. From repertoire to everyday life, we are seeking to share experiences as current students. Here with me today, we have usual hosts, David and Michael. And we have a very special guest with us today, TJ Goss. I'm going to read his profile here. TJ is an active music educator, performer, designer, arranger, and adjudicator in the San Marcos and Central Texas area. He is currently completing both a Bachelor of Music in Percussion Performance and a Bachelor of Art in Psychology at Texas State University. TJ has a vast array of experience in all realms of percussion, from marching percussion to concert percussion, as well as designing and arranging, and some experience in his thing here. He's been a private lessons instructor at Leander ISD from 2016 to 2018, marching percussion instructor and arranger at Texas State University since 2018 till now. Still currently doing that. High school marching percussion technician, just around the areas, San Antonio, other places like that. Even, is that Michigan? Did I read that right?
Yeah, when I lived up in Michigan, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Ohio and Michigan, okay. Battery percussion caption manager at Cadets, at the Cadets, drum and bugle corps, that's 2018 to still today. And yeah, this is TJ, so everybody welcome TJ to the podcast.
Thanks,
how are you?
Glad to be here.
Yeah, how are you doing? Doing all right?
Doing well, man. Staying through everything that's going on right now, so taking it day by day.
Of course. Cool. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Of course, a lot of us have submitted questions for you, and we thought we would go through those, and obviously, answer them how you see fit. I'll start. We can just kind of go around, whatever is best. My first question is, when did you make the decision to do music as a career?
It started as one of those things that it just seemed like the next logical step coming out of high school, where I was super involved in band, as many of us that are still doing it today were at that age, and it just kind of seemed to fit into place. It was where I felt at home, and it was what I enjoyed doing and felt passionate about. So it wasn't so much like I knew that was what I wanted to do as a career, but it was what I knew I wanted to study in college and what I wanted to kind of pursue with my life, as I've done for pretty much the past 10 years since being out of high school. So yeah, it was just kind of the most natural next step in my life, following my passions.
Cool, awesome. What's up?
So did you take 10 years off after high school, or did you start and then you took a break from college?
So right after high school, I went to Texas State for a semester, and then after that, I took a hiatus from school, and that's when I did all of my indoor marching percussion, which took me across the country and stuff like that. I decided to commit to that route and kind of maximize that and not try to juggle both worlds. And then after that, I always promised myself that I would come back and make sure I got my college degree, and now it's going to be degrees, but make sure that I came back and got that accomplished on the back end there. So
yeah, nice. David, you have anything?
No,
I'm
good. Yep.
Okay.
Well, I guess it kind of ties into my question, so I'm going to kind of jump right in. So, because you already have like a pretty successful start of your teaching careers with all the school and drum corps that you get to work with, like, so is there like a specific motivations for you to come back, or is this something that, I promised myself to do it, so I'm going to do it?
It's a little bit of both. It's not like I feel like I've trapped myself into coming back to school or anything like that. But I've always wanted to dig in more on the concert percussion side of things, just because I'm less experienced with that. I want to make sure I'm more well-rounded, and I want to give myself like a wealth of knowledge in that side of the field, and make sure that I'm not kind of like having a tunnel vision down into just the marching percussion realm. As I've gone back to school, I'm also doing the dual degree because I want to study music cognition and kind of get into some of the psychological aspects of music and learning music and practicing and getting better, and using music as a therapeutic tool and things like that. So I want to take my knowledge of a performer and even as an educator, and then take that through my psychological lens through my psychology degree, and try to maximize that from a very scientific sort of standpoint, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, yeah. I had a question in regards to that, going from, because I think all us three, at least, we never really we never took those different routes like separately. We kind of went through them at the same time. So how was that transitioning, doing so much marching percussion, and you're so used to all the aspects of that, just going straight into, or I don't know if it was straight into, but going into the concert side and just like adjusting to all the new things that you have to learn there, and like technique wise, or how was that transition?
I mean, obviously it's a challenge just because it's a different system. You focus more on different things, but I think at the end of the day, there's so much that overlaps with it that I've been able to take strengths I've had in the marching percussion world and bring them to the concert percussion world. And then things that I've learned while studying intensely in the concert percussion world has made me a better educator and a better player in the marching world as well. And so I think the idea that, yes, they're typically very separate worlds, and their approach with seemingly different approaches, at the end of the day, you're still taking a stick or a mallet and you're hitting a drum head or a key. And finding those overarching sort of ideas is a lot easier than a lot of people imagine. Yes, there's tweaks to technique and heightened focuses on different elements, but at the end of the day, I've found a lot of overlapping things that have helped me to find success and not be boxed in and feel like I'm having to do something really forced and awkward. So,
the biggest thing for me was, like you said, there are so many different applications between both. But the biggest one for me was learning. I learned the concept of weight, and like heaviness in your arms and stuff, and just natural weight through the marching percussion world. But I've been taught personally through my college experience, like I've learned how to use that on the marimba as well.
Yeah.
It plays into that a lot, and that I've come to figure out recently. In the past couple of years. What was one big concept? It could have been weight as well for you, but what was a big concept that you took, like the biggest one that you took from that side into the concert world?
I mean, there's a lot of like specific playing things, but I think the biggest one that me as an individual that's been very like detail oriented, and you kind of develop that through doing drum corps and indoor for so many years, like being a very analytical person, understanding how to break things down, understanding good practice habits and things like that. All those sorts of like rehearsal and practicing sort of mindsets that I've developed over the years through teaching and performing in that marching percussion world has been a huge plus for me going into the concert world, and understanding ways to break down certain phrases and create some sort of exercise to work on a specific skill set. Things like that has been a big help and a big concept. But I think another thing too is just, and it's becoming, I feel like a more prominent in the marching world nowadays, is just focusing on the sound and focusing on letting the stick breathe and vibrate in your hands, and those types of things is obviously hugely important when you come to the concert percussion world. Making sure that you're letting the implement speak just as much as you're focusing on the instrument speaking, and that's something that I've experienced more later in my marching percussion career, but I think is directly applicable all the way across the board into the concert world. And as I've dug more into that in the concert world, it's only made me have better understanding and teaching coming back to the rudimental world. So I think those are two big things that kind of stick out to me. Is just like the approach around whatever implement you're holding, going across the board, and just having that analytical mindset of understanding how to practice things and how to dig into them, and being efficient with that. So
yeah, nice, cool. David or Michael, got any other?
Yeah, Was there when you were making like that transition from like marching percussion over to concert percussion, was there like a particular like habit or technique that you found personally like kind of hard to break making that transition, or did it all kind of just like flow naturally from one to the other?
Oh, it definitely did not flow naturally, and I definitely don't want to paint the wrong picture there. I try to stay positive about some of the challenges that I face with that. No, there's definitely a lot of things. One of the biggest things that right off the bat was a very quick thing for me was just playing too high off a snare drum and not allowing myself to focus on just being a little bit more close to it and understanding how loud that drum is in the indoor venues that you typically perform it in. That's such a simple thing, but just like automatically having to train myself to be a lot more minute with that was a big thing. Another thing was relaxing myself when I play mallets. And it's, we talk about how a lot of the percussion instruments, yes, they have their different techniques and grips and stuff like this, but there's a lot of those same concepts that kind of go across the board in percussion. For whatever reason, me being less of an experienced mallet player, I automatically just kind of fell into that like over gripping and over forcing stuff. And so just like Shane was talking about with like using the weight on a lot of keyboard stuff, like that was a big one. I think a lot of it was just the weight of the mallet versus the weight of the stick and what I'm used to having to do to create certain things, and just getting more used to that. That was a big one that took a lot, and it's still something that I'm developing today is getting that same sort of relaxed and ease of approach when I step on behind a keyboard or a marimba.
Yeah, kind of going off of that. A big challenge for me on marimba is there's a couple schools of thought as to how to approach the marimba visually. Some apply it very intensively, and some don't. And people. A good example. Lee Howard Stevens. He's all about how the board sounds, like how you're expressing, and it's not. If you were closing your eyes, it would sound beautiful. Even if you had your eyes open and looking at him, it would sound beautiful. But under my during my studies right now, Perez he really emphasizes, drawing the sound out of the board visually to attract certain things out of the audience, to make it more appealing. So, yeah, that was going off of that was a huge thing for me, is just not being so like rigid, like coming down on the keyboard and just stopping there. I struggle with that still, but I'm trying to break it slowly.
Yeah.
For me, because I'm like a front ensemble background. Like I did a lot of front ensemble before I get really mature as a concert marimba player, I guess. Like the big thing my current professor Nancy Zelsman hate the most is that how much movement I have in the body, because it feels like David knows, because it's like it looks like I'm working really hard. And that's just, how we perform in the marching world. It's like, you're giving everything you got in the sunlight and blah, blah, blah. But then now in the concert world, he's like, just relax. Just make it look easy. Otherwise, you're making me on the edge. And that was like the whole big thing that we talk about, just like how to make me stand taller and just have a natural presence instead of having that energetic presence, which is, I don't know. I'm trying to mix them up. Because I still want to have my own style, and I do like to have that energy present. But at the same time, like, I'm learning from Nancy, so I might as well do what she told me. So, anyway,
David, how going, kind of bridging it to you? How was it like at Eastman, like working with Burritt, like doing that stuff?
Oh, let me tell.
Were you into Eastman?
Oh my god.
Let me.
I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious, because
So like when I was in high school, like I had only mostly primarily done marching stuff. Like that was basically my life throughout like my high school music career. And I was like a really late bloomer when it came to doing like actual like legitimate concert percussion. So like playing four mallets, and playing like De La Cluse etudes. And when I got to my first couple lessons with MJB were rough, to say the least. Because it was like, I'm going to step behind the snare drum, just like ram out the snare etude for him, and he's going to go nuts. And he was like, yeah, it's like fast and really army. And so, like, God, it was probably my first 2 years, I spent every snare drum lesson was just like breaking my habit of getting away from like not like entirely, but like trying to get away from more of like the aggressive, like put sound through the drum kind of nature from marching percussion, and think more about the delicate musical side of like concert snare playing. And it's kind of the same thing when I was playing mallets. Is I was just way too aggressive, and I was like tensing up like crazy. One, because I was like not comfortable with it at all, and two is just I just had like that whole marching percussion stuff ingrained into me so much because I didn't have that much time to like really get out of it. So I really spent a lot of time just agonizing over how I'm gonna like break away from these habits. Yeah, but it's like once you finally reach that, like, I guess, threshold of I actually know like how to distinguish between the two. So it's like I almost was able to find like a switch. So if I was like behind like a tenor pad or something, I would be able to like play with like a marching percussion like style technique, if that makes sense. And then if I got behind like a concert percussion instrument, then I could switch back, and it wasn't that much of a hassle. But at the beginning, oh my god, like just end me. It was so hard.
Yeah,
it's tough. I feel like I've taught enough percussion students where I see, especially I've taught a couple for like over a course of a couple years, and seeing kind of not the battle between the two, but like seeing a student get better with their concert percussion stuff, and then maybe their rudimental stuff gets a little sloppy or a little less in control in terms of like what we want to see visually from that side of the world, or maybe vice versa. I've taught lessons to students that go off and do drum corps, and then they come back and their concert chops are kind of messed up. So it's interesting to kind of see that back and forth, and that's something that I haven't experienced as a direct struggle, kind of doing them at the same time as much. But it's interesting to watch that in others and see just how different people react to it. So it's always interesting to hear people's different people's perspectives on that type of situation, going back and forth between the two.
Mm-hmm. I personally like going from it's. I feel as though, I don't know if you guys agree, but I feel it's, especially coming from a battery background, it's a lot easier to transition to a concert snare drum than it is to a marimba. What I kind of did, I was so nervous about just like losing all my concert chops in the 2019 season. I every lunch or every meal break, I would go up to a marimba and just like do some sort of warm up, like every time, just to like keep it there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that is interesting how like you seeing students go through all that stuff. It's super interesting. Anything else from you two? Anything else?
I did have like a kind of like a different question, but more of like your experience as like an instructor. So on your resume, I noticed that you were kind of like teaching at like the scholastic, collegiate, and also at like world class levels. And I was wondering if there were any like challenges that you faced while kind of coordinating between the three. Did you ever feel comfortable teaching one level more than the others?
Yeah, and it might not be the answer you expect. Personally, I feel the most comfortable at the world class level, like working with the cadets or working with Monarch, working with people in their prime. I don't know if it's because I've spent so much continuous time in that arena, or if it's just kind of the intellectual level that I feel like I can teach at. But for whatever reason, that's where I feel the most comfortable and confident. Now that's not to say that I don't feel out of place sometimes, or feel like I wish I would have approached that differently. But that's where I feel the most kind of at home with it. I would say the younger students, like I teach lessons to middle schoolers, and I've even taught to elementary schoolers. That is probably the hardest teaching that I've ever done, because they know almost nothing at that point, and so everything you explain, you have to take yourself back so far to remember like what it felt like to bounce the stick for the first time, or to play a double versus a diddle, and understand to just let go, like all these simple concepts that at this point we all pretty much understand at a very high level, but to get back into that younger mind with very little experience, and figure out ways to get them to get to that point, and at the same time making sure they're enjoying it. Because at this point, like a lot of us we've been doing it for a while, and we know that there has to be that grind to get that reward of being able to play that cool piece and have that great performance. But as a middle schooler doing it for the first time, they're doing it for fun more than anything. And so finding that balance of helping to make them be better, as well as keeping them entertained and enjoying what they're doing and building that passion that they're going to have for hopefully many years. That's definitely always a struggle that I feel is a lot more challenging in that realm versus people that have been doing it for a while and know that they already love it.
Yeah.
So I actually had a question about that. What are some things that you do with younger students to keep them engaged? Mm-hmm. I struggle with that a lot, and I think it kind of relates to what you were saying earlier, how you feel more comfortable at the world-class level teaching. And I mean, I haven't done that, but I know from teaching high schools in the area, it feels like there's a what am I looking for? It's hard to be relatable in a way, because all the information you talk about with a world-class ensemble is relatable between the instructor and the performer, because they both have experience with that information. But like you said, a middle schooler or some high schoolers, it's like they don't have that relatable information, so they can't base it off of anything. So I find that
foundation.
I find that to be a struggle when teaching. So what are some things that you do? And it doesn't have to be in depth, but just like little tidbits with younger students.
This is definitely something I'm still learning a lot from, and this is something I speak with a lot of friends that teach lessons, especially those that teach that are gearing themselves towards like that elementary education. I teach drum corps with a couple elementary education teachers and have some close friends that are kind of in that arena. And the biggest thing is just like making sure that it's always a positive, fun environment. Mm-hmm. Like when they should be excited every week when it's their time to go to their lesson, and they should enjoy coming into your room. It shouldn't be something, especially at that age, it shouldn't be something that feels daunting and like, oh no, I have a lesson today, I totally forgot, I wish I would have done whatever, I wish I wasn't here, stuff like that. So just being really positive and celebrating, when they have accomplishments like that goes such a long way in just making sure that they're enjoying it and building that long term. Some other things are just like real simple things, like asking. There's been a couple times where I'll take the last 5 minutes of a lesson and just ask a student, like, hey, like, what's some music you're listening to? Like, show me some of the music you're into, because I'm older than you. I'm probably not listening to the same stuff, but I want to hear what you're listening about. And it's interesting to see them get excited about sharing things like that. Or, I've had a lot of students, especially in middle school, will do like a sport and do music and kind of see what they're enjoying and how that's going. So just having a conversation about, stuff that they're doing, like, oh, how's soccer going? What position you play, stuff like that. Having them kind of connecting with them beyond music, I think helps build that connection inside the music then, because they know you're not just someone there to tell them they're doing stuff wrong. Like it builds that personal relationship. So those are some of the things I do, but there's a lot of other smaller things like here and there that can also, jumpstart that excitement. Like, what's a fun song that you want to learn on marimba, and I'll transcribe it and I'll teach it to you. Like something super simple, like just little things like that where they feel like they're participating in the teaching and the learning experience, as opposed to just always being told what to do. I think giving them that ownership, even as a beginner percussionist, can be very empowering for them and create a really, like I said, positive environment for it.
Mm-hmm. I have a question that, sorry, I know I'm asking a lot, but I actually have a question that puts you in the student perspective. When was, for me, it was personally, Dr. Perez threw Kiji in front of me, and all he said was play it. And like that time I had no idea how to play it, like what it was, and I didn't play the roughs like as the general populace of concert percussionists would play it,
Mm-hmm.
And that just blew me away at how, and I didn't know how soft you could actually play concert snare drum. Like, was there a moment for you like that where it was just like it really like kick-started your drive like even more?
I feel like there's a lot that have subtly contributed to that. One that's kind of most prominent in my mind with that is I played Prism, the Keiko Abe piece, and same kind of thing. Like I just got handed that music, and it was like, okay, here's here's all these notes. I want you to learn it. I want you to be able to play it for me next week. And I just remember looking at the span of those pages of just notes after notes after notes, and being very overwhelmed because that was a weakness for me right off the bat, was like learning and remembering to mallet music. I'm a fairly decent reader when it comes to like reading it on the page, but with stuff like that, like you've got to be able to be locked in, and there's not as much room for reading off the music, and so kind of having that memorization process and all the notes, and just moving around the keys, and that overwhelming challenge was kind of like one of those moments where it was like, for a brief second, it was very intimidating, and I kind of got beat down. But in that moment, it was just like, wow, this is such a cool thing that I get to dive into. And I mean, I learned that whole thing in a week, and I couldn't play it super well, but it was an exciting kind of accomplishment to get it down. And that's a pretty well-known piece with a lot of challenge. And that was definitely a moment where like the challenge and like the depth and the breadth of what I was jumping into was very exciting, and seeing all that was a positive jumpstart to my excitement with mallet playing specifically.
Nice. Yeah. Any questions from you guys? Nothing? No? I got another.
I think not right now. Maybe I'll bounce off of another one of your questions again.
Okay. Yeah, I actually had one kind of going off of repertoire now. What are some of your favorite pieces that you've played?
Shane, you really like to ask that question.
I'm curious. I'm curious. I love
question.
talking about rep. I love talking about rep, and I love finding new rep.
Oh yeah, I haven't played as much as I would like, and that's something that I've been. I was supposed to play on a bunch of people's recitals this semester, and then I'm playing on a bunch next semester, and so it's probably all going to get pushed to next semester. But there's a lot of cool rep that I've been able to kind of jump in on. One of my like most like biggest challenging pieces that I've loved to be a part of, and I hope I get to play again down the road to get another shot at it, has been Jose before John 5, just because that piece is like just such a monster of a piece, and
it's nuts.
But it's such a blast. It's such like, I don't know. So that's one that I played before, and it was, I mean, it's a tough piece, so it's hard to really throw that down, especially in a percussion ensemble that's got a mix of majors and non-majors, and does a couple concerts a semester. It wasn't a bad performance by any means, but it's like you open that can of worms and you see what it can be, and it's just like it makes you want to jump back in and do it again. So that's definitely an exciting piece that I've played before. Couple of like full concerts that I've been a part of. We got to debut a piece with the Wind Symphony at Texas State, our first cycle this semester actually. It was a piece by Ryan Chase that he had written for us, and it had a bunch of like cool electronics that he came in and ran for us, and it was a very like cinematic kind of style of music, very modern, and he wrote just all sorts of percussion parts, and it was a really cool thing to not only debut a piece and have the composer there and like be able to discuss some of the things he wrote and have that kind of that dialogue with the composer as you're playing his music, but then to play some of the cool things we got to play. And there was, I think, 8 of us in the ensemble, and we all had these crazy setups. I played like this ridiculous tempo block part, and I played congas at one point and vibraphone, and then we were just all running around, and nobody had like a dull part. So that was a really cool experience to do that in a concert band setting. And the last one that comes to mind is an orchestra performance that I got to do. We got to play the Texas State Orchestra went to TMEA this past year, the Texas Music Educators Conference, and we played with the All-State Choir. And this choir, I think, had like 300 or 400 people in it. So it was a massive choir, and it's the All-State Choir. So they're all really good. And we played Mount Rushmore by Michael Doherty, which is a really cool piece, and actually had some cool percussion stuff. But just being able to play in that big venue where it's just a conference of all people that love music with an awesome choir, and they just like filled up this giant convention hall that we were in, and that was a really cool experience. I feel like I've had almost more enjoyable experiences playing in those full concert settings, even if it's playing like a real small part, for a couple bars and then resting for 300. Some of those just experiences and being part of those pieces have been some of my most fond like performance memories in terms of repertoire. So,
mm-hmm. Any solo literature?
I haven't done a whole lot of solo lit, unfortunately. Kind of stumped me on that one. I was like really just right before all this social distancing and stay at home stuff happened, I was just starting to really dig into a bunch of form out playing, which is really what I wanted to get into with that. I mean, some of the most fun stuff that I've played so far has been like some of the Tompkins snare stuff, which is really fun. Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of like solo lit yet. I've been doing a lot of like ensemble playing.
Are there
just
any?
trying to really broaden that.
Yeah, are there any like, I guess, bucket list pieces? Since you haven't done so much solo, is there any that you want to play? I know there's probably a lot, but any that you can.
Yeah, that's. You're giving me
In the
tough
near
questions
future,
now.
and then let's do it. Let's do that in the near future.
You've got me stumped now. It's like when somebody asks you what your favorite song is, and you're like, I know I have like 30, and I just can't think of any of them right now.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
Go back to this one.
Okay. Let's ask these two. Some of your favorite rep that you've played or want to play.
Well, I'm actually already
hard
preparing
question.
my senior recital, so like.
Cool.
And, yeah. So this is the first time I get to play Wen Yao's music. I'm doing Bird Variations. Alejandro Wen Yao is an Argentinian composer. Like,
Yeah.
He's very famous. Well, for marimba music, he's famous of like kind of rhythmically challenged stuff. And I never really get to do that. A lot of stuff I play is not very rhythmic, I guess. I don't know. It's marimba music, so it's kind of fun to get to do like a math kind of music for the first time. And I'm actually very into it. And when I played for Nancy, she was actually surprisingly how well I prepared. So I was kind of happy.
Oh, you have the whole thing down?
No, I only did like first two variations when I played.
Okay.
For her. Now I'm on like 5 or 6, so I'm
yeah.
pretty close.
Nice.
And then I'm doing a concerto. Since I have the time, so I actually put the piano accompaniment part on the Sibelius. So I have like a quick trip with it. So it's kind of interesting to do it. But
Nice.
yeah, I don't know. That's what I've been working on.
David?
Actually, I think probably my more favorite like solo rep that I've done was actually probably from like this past year, even though it was like cut short. Because I was in the process of learning She Who Sleeps with a small blanket, which is like so like dumb, but like dumb hard, but it's so fun. Because it kind of like gives me like that quad playing Rush, except I'm not actually playing quads. And I was also, Michael and I both played the Colton concert,
I love
which is
that
like
piece.
the Keith Jarrett.
I
like,
love that piece so much.
like awesome, like little jazz bad boy piece. And I think ensemble wise was probably the Pacing concert that the Eastman Percussion Ensemble did in 2017, which was super
I bet that
nutty.
was awesome. Yeah, I bet
Yeah,
that
it was
was awesome.
my one probably only time I'll be at Basic, but it was super awesome, like time, like program wise, and just the experience.
Cool. TJ, I have to ask now, since we're talking about practice and stuff, how are you coping with all this in terms of practice? Like, what are some things you're doing to stay active with all this going on?
It's been tough. My apartment, I don't really have space for any sort of keyboard, and we've been working logistics with the school to try to get some sort of keyboards kind of out to people so we can have access to it. Hopefully, as things start to open up, schools and stuff like that can be easier to get to and stuff like that. But I've been taking some time. Like, I've got a tambourine right now and a triangle, and I've been kind of taking the opportunity to do some accessory playing because that's something that I've always wanted to dig in a little bit more to, as a lot of people do, but really to be able to master some of those instruments and be able to throw them down in a full concert setting and be able to play some of those excerpts and stuff like that. Being in the orchestra is one of my favorite things, just being able to play some of the different excerpts, and we usually play pretty well-known pieces. So to build that skill set is super important. And then I've been working out of this book. I don't know if you guys are familiar. I forget the guy who came out with it. It's a book called Touch and he's got a bunch of orchestral pieces. Yeah, that he's like stripped out like melodic parts with the notation that they have, and you basically play along with these recordings and play the wind parts in a snare setting, and do what you can to adjust your sound and approach and just playing with these pieces. And it's been a huge challenge because it's like you're playing a snare drum part to an English horn solo, and you're like, how do I adjust it? I don't know. It's been a huge opportunity to be very experimenting in approach and adjusting sounds and stuff like that. So that's one that I'm digging into with my limited resources right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the orchestral books that I know of are the Carol books, that they just have the full lists of and full parts of the pieces. So yeah, I love the orchestra stuff too. It's awesome. I had another question. Do you guys have anything?
What's happening? Sorry.
Another question, Michael?
Oh, sorry.
David?
Okay, my internet keep getting cut out, so sometimes like I just don't know what happened. That's why I'm like freezes. So I have to like click the link. I don't know. It's not like I'm not paying attention. I have to because I have the headphone. But it's just,
Yeah.
Sorry. What were we talking about?
No, I was just curious if you guys had any other questions for him.
Yeah, I was wondering. So if so like we're all like stuck at home. What have been like the ways that you've been trying to like make practicing, even though you have like limited instruments? What were like some of the best ways you were able to like still keep it like fresh and like interesting without it kind of getting like monotonous?
That's to be very honest, that's been a huge struggle, because being stuck at home and I feel like a big thing that so many musicians are missing right now is the ability to make music with other people, and having to do that. Even like there's these cool kind of compilation videos of people recording and sending it and kind of putting it together, but that there's not that experience of being in a room together and creating it. So that's definitely been a struggle for me, is finding that motivation to stay the course even while all this is happening and you're missing that. A couple simple things I've done is just like I'll like take my practice pad or my tambourine or all of it, and I'll just get in my car and I'll drive to a park and just go play there, just to get that change of scenery and to be somewhere different. Especially being outside, that's a big thing that helps. And then just like playing to different things. Like I'll working through some of that touch stuff. There's some patterns that I want to figure out or whatever. And maybe instead of playing it with that recording, I'll throw on a pop song that's roughly the same tempo and practice it to that, just to kind of change up a change of scenery, but less from like a visual and kind of where you're at sort of perspective, but more of like the audio sort of scenery that you're listening to. That's definitely a struggle that I think a lot of people are going through right now. That was keeping that motivation when you're not getting that payoff of playing together, even if it is in a rehearsal sort of setting. So that's a good question.
Cool. Michael?
I don't know. I've been pretty lazy lately. Like I'm keep telling myself, oh, starting this week I'm going to practice 6 hours a day. It never happens. Like always something happens. Like my mom told me to get grocery, and then I came back. I'm like, yeah, I don't feel or,
that's it for you. You're tired after that.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it takes. But
have you ever thought of like maybe? Oh wait, Michael, what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering. Have you ever, because like resources are so limited, have you ever like thought of maybe like trying to learn something new, like a new instrument, or maybe just like learning something new in general?
I actually have a violin. Oh wait,
that's for TJ.
Oh, no.
That's for TJ, Michael.
I'll say it.
You're not the guest here.
It's a funny story. I'll so I was like, this is like the second day I came back, and then I was like, oh, I have a violin, so I might as well practice. And I was tuning it, and then I broke the string right away.
Oh my
like,
god!
I guess I'm not learning
Perfect.
violin. So that's my funny story. Anyway, go.
No, to be honest, I haven't. there's a lot of realms that I want to get into. Texas State has a really big Latin music scene. I mean, there's several salsa bands. There's lots of educators that do a lot and put in a lot of resources to that. And so, just like simple hand drumming is something that I want to get into. And maybe now having this conversation is going to kind of enlighten me and connecting with other percussionists. But that's something that I want to. I may not be able to focus on the sounds or some of the very specifics of it, but learning some of the patterns and getting around and that's something that I've always wanted to get into and be more knowledgeable from. So that's something that maybe now I'll jump into, but up until now I haven't really, thought much about that. That's a good idea to kind of, spark some life into it, especially with percussion being such a wide spanning realm. And I think that's why all of us love percussion so much is you're never going to know every percussion instrument. You're never going to run out of new instruments to learn or new styles to learn. So, that's a good way to kind of jumpstart things and get re-energized with it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. It says that on your resume you do a lot of composing and arranging. Are you doing any of that still, like right now? Maybe with the school that is still projected to be there in the fall for everything and all that stuff, or just on your own works or anything?
Most of what I've been doing, in the past couple of years has been kind of on my own, just for fun and just for the practice of it. Getting the opportunity to write for the Texas State Drumline has been kind of one of the first big opportunities to jump into that. And in all my teaching, I've always had like little opportunities to do, some small stuff like that. But it's definitely something I want to get into more. It's just a tough field to get into, or a tough kind of realm to get into, because especially in like the Central Texas area, there's a lot of people that just gravitate towards the big names. Like Andrew Markworth is a huge one that writes for several schools in Austin, and they fly him down, and he comes and kind of does a tour with that. So there's a lot of big names that do really good work, obviously, and kind of are spread across a lot of the groups. So that's something I want to get into more, and I'm hoping to, with the marching percussion world, kind of dive into more. I'm hoping as I play more keyboard stuff that my creativity is sparked and I jump into composing with that. That's something that's still a little bit, I feel like I have to work really hard at just playing it right now, that the creative aspect doesn't come as naturally yet. But I'm hoping that down the road that can be something else that I dive into from a compositional standpoint as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's so hard to, because I do a little bit myself, and I've come to realize that it's so hard to write for solo literature.
Oh yeah,
you're so limited in sound. I mean, you have to be really creative and just to do the right things, I guess. It just with not the right things, but be unique in your own way, and just
Have you ever like when you compose just feel like you're writing what you already play? I don't know.
Who are you asking?
I found it. It's the anybody questions, like, because I know Shane, you've been writing stuff as well.
I mean, I definitely gravitate towards similar like feeling, I guess, not necessarily like similar like oh, I'm gonna use these rhythms like so much like every time. It's just like a certain. I try to capture similar, like I have a certain feeling that I go for that that I like, So I don't know. That's the best way I can put it.
I definitely feel like I do. I feel like there's certain things that, like certain skill sets or patterns that like feel really good in the hands. And I feel like those are not just like go-tos or like, I don't know what's right, so I'm just going to do this. But I feel like a lot of times I find those creep in different forms and fashions, even if they're masked by some slight variation. Where it's like, oh, okay, I wrote that because I play those all the time when I'm, just hacking around and improvising or whatever. I definitely feel that come into play where it's like, sometimes I realize and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that because that's something I already do too much. So it's definitely an interesting thing to be aware of with your composition.
Mm-hmm.
I even wonder when you're like composing like keyboard music, sometimes you might get into like pitfalls. And when you like finish something and it sounds like a certain way, people would be like, "Oh, that sounds like Ivan Trevino," or like that sounds like anything that sounds relatively poppy. Would be like, "Oh, that's Trevino," or that sounds like Vinyao or whatever. So I think at this point it's probably a lot more difficult to like kind of find your own like unique style, because I feel like at this point it's always going to be like compared to something that's already out there.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine being like a keyboard composer like in 2020 and then in the future, because it must get super hard.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing of, no one is ever going to be totally original.
Yeah.
The book that I think of that Perez recommended to me was Steal Like an Artist. If you guys ever heard of that? It's a good book. It talks about just exactly what it is, like stealing like an artist. Like you have to take things that you like and just mold your own unique sound out of those combinations of things. So it's a good book. I'll have to send it to all of you. It's pretty good. Speaking of composition, are there any who are some of your favorite composers right now?
That's another tricky one. I mean, I'm a big fan of a lot of Ivan Trevino's stuff right now, just because he's got some pop stuff, but there's a characteristic to listening to his, especially his marimba literature, that's just really enjoyable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's sometimes it's easy listening, and sometimes it's more complex, but it's just very, I don't know, it's like a grounding type thing for me when I listen to music from him. Another one is a friend of mine who doesn't do a whole lot. It's Robert Marino. He wrote the was it 8-on-3 and 9-on-2. He's the principal timpanist for the Navy, I believe.
Oh, wow.
But he's an old cadet space drummer, and so I met him last summer. He came out and helped for a couple days when we were out at Annapolis. But he's a concert percussion player, and he does all this stuff. But he's one of the ones that wrote that. And he just came out with this new piece, another duet piece, very similar to that, with an old bass drum friend of his, and it's like 1,000 times more crazy. And so some of the creative kind of crossovers that he has between some of his rudimental bass drumming background that he brings into the concert world is a really cool kind of combination. And seeing him play and seeing him come up with that, because he would post videos of snippets of them kind of composing it. They just put it out in a recital not too long ago. But just like seeing that creative process as they work through it and kind of talking to him about it has been a cool experience as well. So
he wrote that piece.
Yes.
See, that makes so much sense now that I like hear it in my head. Like, wow, that makes a bass drummer wrote it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. What else? Do you guys have anything else? No?
Oh. I think I'm actually good. Yeah, good for now.
I think I'm all set. I think we've learned a lot. TJ, how do you feel?
That was good, man.
Good?
I love talking shop, so
Yeah.
it's a good time.
I'm really jealous that you got a haircut.
Me too, man.
I need a haircut.
Me
Your haircut
too.
so badly.
Man, I was waiting. I actually got it done on Memorial Day. I've been looking because most of them have their apps nowadays where you can check like how long the wait is. And I usually check every day when I get off work in the afternoon, and it's always like, 2-hour wait, hour and a half wait. And then Memorial Day, I checked as I got off work, and there was like a bunch of places that had no wait. And so I jumped right on it, and apparently they were super slow from the holiday for whatever reason. So I snuck in there, and they're back to being busy. But
Nice. Yeah,
I was just staring at your fade the whole time.
it's going to be a good feeling for all of us when we get that haircut.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Can't wait.
I'm trying to think. We didn't talk much about the marching percussion world. We didn't talk about it that much. We did at the beginning. I wanted to ask, not ask, but if you could just like go through your experience in the indoor scene.
Yeah, so my first time being exposed to even what indoor was going to a camp in late January for a group that doesn't exist anymore, but it was Imperial Percussion Theater. I remember being on Snare Science and was just scanning through, and this group posted that they needed somebody to come in to fill a vibe spot. And so I was like, cool. I mean, I don't really know what WGI is, but I've seen, a couple of videos of like RCC or, just like snippets of things, because this was kind of before all the social media aspect got super big. And I went out and I like learned some music, and I was playing with the pit. And it was like a Saturday night. We did a block, and I learned some notes. And the next day, apparently, like one of their quad drummers got cut. They cut him because he was like not showing up to rehearsals, which is kind of weird to think about. But and I was like, hey, like I play quads too, and so like I did this little audition, and they're like, all right, you're on the quad line.
Oh, man.
And within like the next weekend, I learned like the whole show, and that was like my first experience of indoor. Was like being thrust into it, like pretty much in February, learning the whole show in a weekend. So that was my first experience. That was I did a year there, and then I moved to Michigan and did 2 years of a group called North Coast Academy, which unfortunately no longer exists as well. It was run by a bunch of guys that I'd marched drum corps with the past year, and so they ended up having a spot open up as well, and so I went up there. After that, I moved to California for a year and did a year with Pulse Percussion, which was super fun. It was people that I had marched with the previous summer, a bunch of West Coast guys, and they told me to come check it out, and so I went out and auditioned and got a spot there. And then I spent my last 2 years in Ohio marching Rhythm X. And again, it was just people that I'd marched with during the summer, and they talked up their experience, and so I decided to check it out. A lot of people ask me like why I did so many different groups, and it was never that I felt like I wanted to leave a certain group for any reason, that I didn't like it, or that there was a reason forcing me out of it. There was just always something else that interested me, a different style, a different staff, and I feel like I've been able to really suck up a lot of different approaches and ways to go about things and kind of mold that together in how I teach today. So I think it's cool. I'm very grateful for all the experiences that I've had, and I feel like I've made a lot of good friendships and relationships across the way too. So
Cool, yeah.
What are some of the difficulties moving around that much? Like maybe like incomes or housing? Do you have troubles with those stuff?
both. Oh yes, always. When I was in California, I lived in a garage, and I paid $300 a month to live in a garage. It was so expensive. But I lived at this house, and it was a bunch of people that were marching, and all the rooms were full. Like each room had like 2 people in it, and that was the only thing I could find. Was living in a garage, and luckily, like we had AC in there, and I pulled up a futon, and I lived in a garage for like 4 or 5 months living out in California. So those were some of the struggles. All the situations weren't as kind of rough in it as that was, but just like moving and then trying to find money and just like uprooting your life just to go do this thing was always a tricky thing. So I worked a lot of odd jobs. I worked at a Tim Hortons for a while. I worked at a grocery store. I worked at a fast food restaurant in Detroit. Just all sorts of wild kind of roundabout ways of making money. But that was definitely one of the biggest things, was making sure that I had a place to sleep and making sure I had money to pay the bills to stay in that place to sleep. But I mean, it was one of those like life-changing experiences, putting yourself out there and figuring out how to live someplace super far from home, where your parents are across the country, and there's not, I mean, if you mess up, like you've got friends, but there's not a lot to fall back on. So it was tough, but that was a big like life learning experience to live in all those places. So
Yeah. Most memorable indoor show you've been a part of?
there's definitely 2014 with Pulse. That's just one of the most fun shows that I was ever a part of, because the whole it was just it was such an animated, goofy show, and it fit so well the personalities of the membership. And I think 7 of the 8 snares, 3 of the 4 quads, and 2 of the bass drums, we all had just marched a whole summer together at Blue Stars. So we all knew each other really well. There was already like a good vibe there. And like I said, the show concept just fit the personalities of the members. It was just super wild, super goofy.
Nice.
So that was just a really fun show to be a part of.
And then the next obvious question is favorite drum corps show you've been a part of. Oh, and where you marched. We have to go through it. Gotta go through it. People gotta know.
First summer, yeah. No, it's good conversation though. First summer was the hometown corps, which was Crossman. I remember auditioning for I think 2 or 3 years before I actually made it. So it was that kind of repeated getting back into it. Dust yourself off and get back into it kind of mentality with that. And so that was my first summer, was Crossman. After that, I wasn't going to march the next year, just from a bunch of financial stuff and everything, and ended up filling a hole in move-ins at Blue Knights. My high school band director was actually the brass caption head, and like got me that, or kind of got me into that situation there to audition for that spot. And then after that, I marched a summer at Blue Stars, which was when all the West Coast guys came over and took over there, which was a fun experience. And then my last 2 summers were with Blue Coats, which was super fun. My favorite summer experience would probably be 2014 Blue Coats, the Tilt show, just because so much of the music was just really new and fresh and modern. They took a bunch of Andy Akiho pieces and kind of formulated that into the show, which was really cool to kind of have that percussion element. And just the show just came together really well. Like there was it was a smooth season from that end, which is not always the case in drum corps. And so it was enjoyable from that aspect. And just playing good music all summer was really cool. So that's definitely my most enjoyable summer.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. I definitely enjoyed that show for sure.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a weird question. I remember a couple years ago, I heard that there was like some sort of stigma again, and I know when you were saying that when you were like going to different groups, like in the indoor scene, and you were getting a bunch of like different experiences, different techniques, and which I totally agree with. Like that's such a nice benefit to have. I remember a couple years ago that people kind of had a stigma of people doing that, going to like like core hopping and like going to different indoor groups and stuff like that. What is like your stance on that kind of like negative perspective?
Where I come at it is I mean, obviously as a member I did that, so I'm obviously going to be kind of biased towards that because I understand the benefits you can get to it. But where I'm at right now is seeing how much students are paying to march drum corps. Like they should be able to go where they want to go to have the best experience.
Yeah.
And you know, if you don't think their motives are right, like that's not really your place to do because they're the ones that are spending that money. You know what I mean? It's their investment. They're the ones putting the time there.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to come back to a core, or if they want to go try something else, or you know, maybe move up in the ranks, however you equate that to be the case, like it's at the end of the day, it's their choice. My big thing, and I think where a lot of the issues around that happens, is when people just kind of slip out in the night and don't communicate why they're looking for a certain experience or things like that. And so that's my big thing with all the members I teach, is at the end of the year, I tell them, like, yes, I would love you to come back. I would love to build off your veteranship. But if you're seeking something else and there's something else that you feel unfulfilled about, or if there's an experience you're looking for, or somebody you want to go learn from, that's awesome. And I'm going to support you as an educator. Just be open and honest about it. So that way we all are on the same page. It's when people just kind of say they're going to come back and then don't show up, and then you're like, well, where'd they go? And then you see them at another drum corps. That's where I think a lot of that negative stigma comes from, is people not kind of handling their business the most professional way. All my experiences with people going elsewhere has always been a super positive thing. I've had a lot of members that have come through and marched under me and then gone somewhere else and had a wonderful, fantastic career, and maybe found a better home for them as a full corps or with a different staff, or you know, things like that. I never take that kind of thing personally, as long as it's, you know, communicated in a professional way. But yeah. I definitely agree that there is a little bit of a stigma to it, and not everybody is as understanding of the reasons why people do that, and they just say, oh, well, they just didn't come back. They're you know, and they can. Educators honestly are a little immature sometimes in how they respond to that, and I try to always be very understanding with the members with that. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of members are also nervous to do that.
Oh yeah,
so nervous. I was whenever I had to do that. It was oh, I remember the feelings. It was very, very difficult.
No, absolutely, and that's why I like to put myself forward and kind of start that conversation, because I know how intimidating it can be to do that. And, you know, I think opening up and saying, hey, like, if you're thinking about going somewhere else, that's cool. Let's just talk about it. Let's find what's going to be a good fit. But I definitely agree. It's not an easy thing to say, hey, thanks for all you did for me this summer, but I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
God.
Yeah. But yeah. We all good? I think we've been at it for a while. Thank you, TJ, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
like I said, good to have the percussion chat.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a wrap on the undergraduate. We will see you guys next time.